So, after our last video, I want to talk about some other King of the Hill episodes, and I swear it's not because the last one did really well and had a lot of engagement. I just really like talking about this show, and King of the Hill is supposed to come back later this year, so I'm excited about getting more of one of my favorite adult animated shows. Also, this episode was requested by my brother, and this episode has a moment that pairs well with the next episode I want to talk about. So, without further ado, Life in the Fast Lane, Bobby's Saga. They really couldn't have made that episode title any longer, could they? We start with a fairly normal scene with Boomhauer pulling up to a stoplight before meeting the eyes of another motorist, prompting Boomhauer to challenge the guy to a street race in the most casual way, because I guess Boomhauer just challenges anyone with a decently fast-looking car to street races. Now that I think about it, that's probably how Boomhauer makes his money, betting on illegal street races that he knows he'll win. Which, in this situation, he does, which is bad for him because the opponent was a cop in an unmarked vehicle.
Good evening, sir. Do you know why I pulled you over?
What the? Me? What's going on? Listen up, I'm you from the future. I came back to warn you. Whatever you do, don't steal Shady Do-Rag's joke. I wasn't going to, and if you're me from the future, you should know that. Oh, I'm actually you from like 10 years from now when you quit procrastinating and upload videos on time for a change. Do you think we actually remember what we put in our videos from that long ago? So you came back in time to warn me not to do something when you could have, I don't know, looked at the script? Yeah, is that so unbelievable? Yeah, it is, considering backwards time travel is improbable, if not outright impossible. And it's far more likely that you're one of my friends messing with me by stealing one of my spare costumes. Oh shit!
2 days later.
Okay. Come on. Give me one moment.
1 costume change later.
So, the cop challenges Boomhauer to a rematch at the Speedway, and the winner gets to drive a pace car for NASCAR, something that for Boomhauer is probably a dream come true. Of course, the cop isn't going to let Boomhauer's win off easy as he tickets Boomhauer and then sabotages his entry. After the intro, we see the guys working on Boomhauer's car getting it ready for the race, when Bobby comes up trying to get Hank to sign a check for a new bike, and Hank decides to teach Bobby the value of $1 with a literal dollar, which is hilarious to me. Though Hank's first mistake here is handing Bobby $1 and saying, let's see what you can turn it into, like Bobby's going to assume the role of Ryan Trahan and buy something he can quickly sell for a profit. So Bobby takes his $1 and with it, he buys lunch. Now, another YouTuber who talks about King of the Hill, reviewed to death, laughs about how Bobby is crouched over eating his burrito when he could have just gotten inside to eat. However, I want to point out that for some reason, Bobby walked to a fast food joint, ordered a burrito and quesadilla off the value menu for $1, maybe he had more money from his allowance, but we weren't told that, and then walked home and was finally unable to wait to eat his burrito on his front doorstep. So I ask you the question, why didn't Bobby eat at the restaurant? Does Bobby just have a video game meter constantly draining where once it empties he has to have a taco or he drops dead?
Probably I do, after all. When my meter empties, I have to sustain it with the fine taste of flesh.
Wait, what? Not again!
4 hours later.
Okay, that was easier the second time. So, disappointed with Bobby's decision, Hank decides to make Bobby get a job and drags his son down to the racetrack, where Bobby gets a job working for Jimmy Richard. And we get an ominous warning from the kid already working there, as when Bobby gets hired, the kid immediately quits and flees over the closest fence. Bobby puts on a good face, unlike the rest of the kids working at the raceway. I guess they don't sell beer considering there's no adults working other than Jimmy, who I think owns the place. Maybe he's just a manager, that would make more sense with his later appearances.
3 cans was my cans. I smashed them myself, smashed them good.
Bobby, however, isn't very good at the job as he nails a woman in the face with a bag of peanuts before quickly losing his entire tray of snacks. Tough break, though I can resonate with my first job. Came in all ready to work, and everyone who had been there a while realized that work sucks. Took me about 6 months before the soul-crushing nature of fast food broke my spirit. So Bobby has a run-in with his boss who misidentifies him as the previous boy who Bobby took over for. And at the end of the day...
Mr. Richard? Oh.
Okay, look. Just because it's a free action doesn't mean that I'm going to tap that with a 10-foot pole. So Jimmy, who doesn't know how to use his calculator properly, overcharges Bobby, and upon returning home, Bobby explains why he wants to quit his terrible job.
It's hot, and the tray is heavy, and my boss is really mean, and he calls me Tommy.
Now, Hank thinks Bobby is just complaining because he doesn't like his job, and tells him that calling Jimmy names is acting like a baby. I could make an argument about how Hank is wrong about telling Bobby to stick with his terrible job, which honestly would be dumb. If your job sucks, find a better one. because there's no point in being miserable if you can do something about it. However, in this specific moment, I'm with Hank. This is Bobby's first job, and for all he and Hank knows, this could have just been one abnormally bad day. Yes, with the events of the rest of the episode, we know that Bobby staying is a bad decision. But the thing is, bosses can be idiots. I can't tell you how many dumb decisions managers have made that only make the job more expensive, harder, and less profitable in my day job, but instead of quitting, I just sit back and watch the fireworks. I have yet to work for a boss that I would trust not to stick a fork in an outlet. And for Bobby, Jimmy really hasn't done anything all that bad yet. All he's done is treat Bobby poorly, and he's an idiot. He's not endangering Bobby or even asking all too much. Yes, having Bobby repay for the stolen food and drink may be a little too far, but if Bobby had come back after selling all the snacks claiming they were stolen and he pocketed the money, it would be an entirely different conversation. Bobby is being unfairly overcharged, especially because he's been given the debt of another kid. But for Bobby's specific mistakes and the food he eats on shift, well, Jimmy does have a right to sell food to his employees. Not every job offers an employee meal after all. It's a gray area where I can find myself arguing for either side. I don't think Bobby should be punished for him getting robbed, essentially. But he was only robbed because he left his tray unsupervised when he should not have. It was a mistake that is solely Bobby's fault. The other thing we have to keep in mind is that Hank is still trying to teach Bobby a lesson in the value of a dollar. The harder you work for that dollar, the harder you'll think about how to use it. Bobby pretty much throughout the entire show doesn't understand the value of a dollar or of hard work. He doesn't know what he's worth yet. I personally have had the experience of working very hard for someone for years and had a kid walk in and within 6 months he was making more money than me. Granted, it was only 75 cents, but it was the principle of the thing. I told my manager I wanted a raise to make the same money that the 16-year-old was making, and at the time I was 19 or 20 and the boss said no. So I found a new job, taking a pay cut but making up for it with better hours and benefits. Cherry on top was a few months later I ran into one of my old managers and she told me they didn't realize all the things I used to do there because I was the only one that would clean, well, everything. Hank does end up giving Bobby some advice that, depending on the situation, is either really good or really bad advice. Hank pretty much tells Bobby to be a yes man and just always working regardless of what happens. Like, I know what Hank is going for, have a good work ethic, it'll make you look good to the boss and the customers, but Hank words it in a very bad way. After all, if you only say yes, you eventually hit a point where you become trapped in the system you're in. There's a fine line where you end up being too reliable and valuable in your spots, where moving you could jeopardize the everyday runnings, and if you never complain, there's never really any room for you to grow. There is a reason as to why Hank remains an assistant manager in a job without a manager, even though Hank fulfills a role that would normally go to a general manager, especially when Buck's not around, but I can elaborate some more on that some other time. So Bobby returns to work with a can-do yes sir attitude. This gets Jimmy to take notice of Tommy, and he starts giving the boy more unpleasant jobs, starting with mopping the men's room. I guess Bobby does get a promotion, but it's a sideways promotion with extra responsibilities and no extra pay. Bobby then asks Hank more advice, which is find jobs that no one wants to do and do it. I would complain about how I got saddled as a dishwasher for nearly 2 years at my first job, but I actually preferred washing dishes over cooking the food, so it worked out for me. So it's race day, and Tommy keeps doing every job thrown at him, and Bill ruins Boomhauer's chance at winning by sneaking into the car to clean the window, slowing Boomhauer down. Jimmy also realizes something's up with Tommy, considering he's volunteering for every job that no one wants to do. And Tommy puts his foot in his mouth, saying that he's after Jimmy's job, which makes Mr. Witchard very angry. The next day, when NASCAR finally arrives, we learn that the cop from the beginning of the episode won the rematch, and fairly quickly, the first two pace cars crash, leaving only one more before Boomhauer gets to drive. Bobby arrives with soda, which Hank pays for before Dale reveals to Hank just how dumb Jimmy Witchard really is.
He fried his brain one day just staring at the sun.
Making Hank realize that Bobby's boss is dangerous right about the time that Jimmy is calling Tommy over for a drink and telling him to cross the track with the cars racing at 180 miles per hour. And yes, I did have to look that up. This angers Hank so much that he sprints onto the track, nearly gets killed, and in one swift kick, kicks through a chain link fence. A fence meant to shield the audience from debris in the event of a crash. It is just a normal chain link fence, but it's still impressive. This is also one of the only times that we get to see Hank kick someone's ass. Literally, too. Hank then goes on to apologize to Bobby and offers to pay Bobby for his work, which Bobby rejects, offering for Hank to just buy him some pants, showing that he still doesn't know the value of a dollar, but also showing that he doesn't really care about money either. This is a pretty good episode, though I think the ending could have been a bit better if Jimmy was a little more unhinged on Bobby's first day. He's a bad boss, but there's definitely worse that Bobby could have had, at least up until Jimmy almost got Bobby killed. Though I do like that they show the dangers of Hank's mindset when it comes to work, even if it's exaggerated. Now, if you excuse me, those monsters are really starting to smell, and I'm hoping they won't be a hard mess to clean. So I'll see you in the next. Is that like a hole in the wall or something? Where did these things keep coming from?